Okay. All right, so I think we're all set now. Guys, it's a real pleasure for us to welcome our second guest on our podcast. We have on the line with us Jacob Schepis, and it's an honor, pleasure again for us to have him after a couple of months and having in mind the difficult times we live in. We have the opportunity to chat with him and for him to share his amazing experience and knowledge in regard to strength training, nutrition, recovery, and basically all the tips you can get in order to be successful on your goals. For those who knew, if there are such who don't know who Jacob is, he's owner and director of JPS Health and Fitness. He literally helped thousands of people to improve their strength, well-being, overall health, and body composition using evidence-based resistant training and nutrition. Jacob is also a professional in bodybuilding and international powerlifting federation competitor, where he has competed in national level, for those who don't know, and achieved the top ranking 8 in Australia, which is it's amazing. And I believe the last 10 years or more, Jacob developed his business not only as online coaching, but also their facility in Melbourne, that is one of the best gyms in Australia. And he's helping people with personal training and also holding seminars, workshops, and work with people in the evidence-based community throughout the world, having the opportunity to help everyone in that area. So I want to welcome you again, Jacob, and to thank you for your time. You can add anything I missed in that part.
No, thank you for having me. That was very comprehensive. Not much I can add to that. I'm flattered with the introduction. Thank you, David.
Very welcome. And let's don't waste any of your time. We know that you're busy, so let's move straight to the point. First, we wanted to check with you and to share some thoughts on strength training in general, since now we know that with the COVID situation, a lot of people have been locked down at home, working out with limited equipment. So I think that if we can use that opportunity to cover the basics and the foundations, since people benefit a lot from that. And again, now we're starting to work out again. So we wanted you to provide more information about strength training in general, sets per body part, the frequency, the rest between sets, also to cover cardio at some extent. Is it a low intensity or HIIT cardio? Should we use the loads like plant, or we should cover them and a given session if we feel that we are tired? And should we like use free weights primarily or mix machines and free weights?
Yeah, so great news for everyone, I guess, by the time this is going to be released, is that people will be back in the gym and putting away with the bands, the kettlebells, and the bodyweight exercises, which is great news. And I think when we return to the gym after a layoff, which is technically what home training is, because we can't perform the gym-specific movements that we would normally perform, so we can't use the heavy weights. We don't have access to some of the equipment. So we just haven't been able to train in the way that we normally would. And as a result of that, we've probably lost some of the fitness and adaptations that we would otherwise have accrued when we were training before COVID-19. And as we lose fitness, we detrain a little bit. It's very likely if people are training really, really hard at their home gym training and they're doing a great job in pushing themselves and getting enough stimulus on the muscles, that they won't have lost much muscle during the COVID-19 period, but they probably will have lost some of the neural and connective tissue adaptations that we get from the heavy lifting. So I think as we return to the gym, we really need to be careful with how we approach getting back into our regular training. And instead of jumping right back into things, we need to have a very gradual approach to building up our volume and intensity. So the first thing I would recommend to people as they go back to their training now is to adjust your expectations. Don't think that it's going to be a good idea to try and perform the same amount of volume or lift the same loads that you were before you started your home gym training. You have to really accept that you probably lost some strength and your body is no longer acclimated or accustomed to the volume and the type of training that you're doing when you were in the gym before you started your home workouts. So with that in mind, adjusting your expectations is really important. And we know through the research that generally after 2 to 3 weeks of no training, we start to see muscle and strength start to decline a little bit. And especially because we've been training at home now for months, many of us, our strength will probably drop quite a bit, muscle mass maybe not, but nonetheless, we need to gradually build up as we come back to the gym. So first, adjust your expectations and don't rush things expecting your performance to be at the same level as it was before COVID-19 came about. So what I recommend people do is start slow, ease your way back into training with less volume, around 50% of what you were doing before COVID-19 came about. So if you were doing 15 sets for your quads in a week, then now I would probably start with anywhere from, say, 7 to 8 sets per week. You also keep the intensity lower. As I said, you won't be as strong as what you were, so you're going to have to lift lighter loads. And you probably want to keep your RPE around 5 to 7, so a little bit further from failure, just so that you can build back into your previous strength and fitness levels. And also starting with a bit lower frequency. So if you're training 6 days a week normally, it's probably a good idea to train only 3 to 4 times a week, or at least train each muscle group no more than twice a week at first, just so that you can give yourself some time to recover and adapt to the new training stimulus, because that's what's happening is home gym workouts are going to be very different type of stimulus to what you're going to get at the gym. So you need to be very careful with how you plan your reintroduction to that training. So going slow is going to be really important. Lower frequencies, training each muscle group twice a week, and each lift maybe once or twice a week, with no more than, say, 3 to 4 sessions a week. You want to be using half the volume you normally do and lifting loads that are around the 5 to 7 RPE, so plenty of reps in reserve. And then you can build from there. So this is introductory period I generally like to use for 1 or 2 weeks with my clients and athletes if they're coming back from a layoff. And this is definitely the approach I'll be taking when everyone in Australia is getting back into the gym, because our gyms over here aren't open just yet. So when I'm programming for my clients, I will be having a 2-week introduction phase where we'll just gradually build very minimal training. It's just doing enough, but not too much, so that they can get back into the swing of things. And it's really important when you are getting into your training again that you monitor your recovery and soreness. So you're looking at how sore you are for the days following your workout. And if you're super, super sore and you're not recovering from session to session and you have what's called overlapping soreness, say, for example, you do your squats on a Monday and then you've got to do some more squats on a Thursday and your legs are just so fatigued and tender, you're probably doing a little bit too much volume or intensity. So you need to reduce the volume a little bit, bring the intensity down a fraction, so that you can induce what's called the repeated bout effect. So that is when we have consistent and regular exposure to a stimulus, the body builds up these like protective mechanisms so that it doesn't cause the same level of disruption next time you're exposed to that. So once you're recovering and your soreness is all where it should be, so you're getting a little bit sore but not too sore, and you're recovering from session to session, and your performance is improving, great. You don't need to add volume. And this is a great opportunity to kind of hit the reset button for a lot of people and figure out where their volume requirements are. And in many cases, people will probably make better gains with less volume than what they think. So they might not need to add too much more volume after these introduction weeks because they're going to be progressing and they're going to be adding weight to the bar, performing more reps, and just seeing improvements in their gym performance. So only increase the training stress, so the intensity, so the weight on the bar and the RPE after those first 2 introduction weeks. And then, if your progress starts to slow and you're recovering really well, you're not getting too sore and you are recovering, then you might need to add a little bit more volume and up the dose, so to speak, so that you can continue to make progress. But I don't think many people need to do that for at least a couple of months. I think once you come out of those introduction weeks, you might add a few sets here and there, but you should make pretty good gains because you're going to be regaining all of the adaptations that you might have lost previously. And the good news for everyone is that we get back all of our muscle and strength very, very quickly. So again, people shouldn't rush and be afraid that if they take it slow, then it's just going to delay their progress, so to speak. because I know for me and for my athletes, I want them to be training for a long time. And going too hard too early can dramatically increase your risk of injury. If your acute workload spikes and you're not adapted to that training stress, and you don't have the chronic kind of adaptations and fitness levels there, your risk of injury will be heightened. And if you do get hurt, you'll be on the sidelines and even more frustrated than you are doing bodyweight squats for 80 reps at home during COVID-19. So that's my recommendations for returning to training. There were a couple of other questions you had in terms of cardio and machine exercises. But yeah, if you've got any questions on what I just discussed, we can go from there.
It is pretty extensive information, and thank you so much for the tips. I think that it will be very beneficial for everyone listening to that podcast, that more is not always better. And there are often people doing more than they need to do in order to progress. So they're doing a lot of sets, additionally adding unnecessary volume, which is accumulating fatigue, and that's not always better for them. And they can simply progress, as you said, with less time in the gym and have the gains they need and the stimulus for them to progress. So this is very important, and thank you for covering that and making a note that that should be a very, very good time for people to reset their expectations in terms of volume. So they can even spare some time in the gym and focus on their technique, on mobility, and basically recovery, so they can progress for longer and train longer. It's not a process that requires a week or a month. It's something we do for a lifetime, so it's important for us to be healthy.
Totally.
Yeah, and well, for cardio specifically, you mentioned that in our question. Do you have your client do both types of cardio? Do you have specific preference in terms of the cardio type, whether it will be low intensity or HIIT cardio, and how do you implement that?
Yeah, so it's always going to depend on my client's goals. And if we look at, say, fat loss, then my preference will always be whatever the individual enjoys the most, because that's what they're going to stick to for the longest.
Okay.
But using cardio when somebody's goals are fat loss, we really only use cardio as a means to increase total daily energy expenditure. And I think there's a lot of utility in adding cardio from a behavioral standpoint, because it gets people into pretty good behaviors that will facilitate their goals. And oftentimes we can increase what's called energy flux. So by burning more calories, people can eat more calories to achieve the same relative energy deficit. And that's always a good thing, because if people can diet eating more food, it's just going to be a little bit easier. And generally speaking, we have a much harder time eating less calories and very little food than we do burning more calories through exercise. It's a bit easier to do more exercise, a lot harder to restrict your food. So I like to use cardio to increase energy expenditure and allow people to eat a little bit more food when they're dieting. But from a physiological perspective, if we are trying to maximize fat loss, we're really only concerned with energy deficit, which we can achieve through diet plus exercise, and muscle retention. So when it comes to achieving that energy deficit, cardio is merely a tool to burn calories. Okay. And you can burn calories with high intensity interval training, and you're just going to burn more calories in a shorter period of time. Or you can do lower intensity steady state, and you're going to burn less calories in the same period of time that you would achieve through HIIT. So it'll just take you longer to achieve the same total calorie burn if you're doing low intensity steady state. For example, if you do high intensity interval training, you might burn 100 to 200 calories in 15 to 20 minutes. If you do low intensity steady state, it might take you 60 minutes to burn 100 to 200 calories. So it really depends on the person's preference. Do they have the time to perform 60 low intensity steady state, or do they have time that would mean that do 20-30 minutes of cardio? And if that's the case, then high intensity interval training or moderate intensity steady state will probably be a better option. But we then also have to consider the cost of that high intensity interval training, because as we increase intensity, we generate more fatigue. And if we're performing cardio that causes an amount of fatigue that impairs their ability to recover from their resistance training and subsequently impedes their training performance, and they start to see decrements in their strength, and they're not lifting the same amount of weight, and they're not recovering from their resistance training, that could lead to muscle loss. And as I said earlier, our goals when we're in a fat loss phase are to, 1, create a calorie deficit, and 2, retain muscle. So if we're trying to create a calorie deficit, but then we compromise our second objective of retaining muscle, then we have to really rethink our strategy. And that's where I generally prefer lower intensity steady state, because it doesn't interfere with resistance training as much. But again, it all comes down to individual preferences and whether or not somebody's time constraints and lifestyle permit them to perform like longer bouts of cardio. But also, over the years, I've come to focus a lot less on cardio and more on total daily step count, because I think that encapsulates much more holistically somebody's total daily energy expenditure. And I will give my clients a step target, and if they want to use whatever cardio they prefer to meet that step target, that's all I'm really concerned about. And that's a very simple but effective way to monitor the energy expenditure side of things for fat loss. When it comes to utilizing cardio for other goals, such as athletic performance, aerobic or endurance and aerobic capacity and all these sorts of things, cardio is absolutely beneficial to target those fitness qualities. So if somebody has a goal of improving their endurance, then I'm absolutely going to give them some form of cardio, and it's going to be tailored towards a specific have. For most of my clients, their goals are fat loss and muscle gain. So season capacity, because this can have downstream effects and transfer to their performance in the gym. So if somebody's aerobic capacity is very poor and they start gassing out and they're breathing really heavily, if they're doing sets of 15 on, say, a leg press, and they have to stop early, which is called volitional interruption, because their aerobic capacity is the limiting factor, that's going to impair their ability to get a stimulus on the muscle, because they're stopping because of the aerobic stress that they're under, not the muscular fatigue that they're experiencing. So this is called, central fatigue, and we don't want central fatigue when we're looking to build muscle. We want local muscular fatigue. So if I see one of my clients or athletes and their aerobic capacity is very, very average, in the off season, I will program some cardio, both high intensity interval training, moderate intensity steady state, and a bit of LISS, just to improve their aerobic capacity, so that when they get into that higher rep work, they've got to push in the gym, no longer is the aerobic system the limiting factor, and they can work really hard at fatiguing the muscle at a local level, so that they can build size. And that size, when they build more muscle, athlete will help them produce more force, because we know that a bigger muscle relative to its size can produce more force, and that's going to add kilos to the bar for my powerlifters and strength athletes. So I think cardio is very beneficial, not just for fat loss, but also building muscle and improving strength. If it is a limiting factor in somebody's ability to train hard in that hypertrophy training, or their work capacity is limiting their ability to achieve the stimulus for whatever they got.
This is great. There's nothing else to add, really. Pretty great explanation. Thanks for that, Jacob. And do you think that now, when we're returning to the gym, we should have the introduction weeks, then the following weeks, and if needed, we can increase and adjust volume accordingly? Then should we plan a deload week at some point, or we should go as a flow, as they say? And if we feel a certain session is off the rails and we don't feel recovered, to implement it on the spot instead of just planning a certain day?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of planning in deloads. I like planning in deloads because it gives your training cycle structure. So usually what I do with my athletes is I'll set up a training cycle and I'll have a ballpark estimate of how long I think this cycle will run for before we need to deload. And that's generally between 5 to 10 weeks. But I also know that when I plan in a deload within that 5 to 10 week time forward, experiencing too much fatigue could be pushed back if they're recovering just fine and they're improving their performance and everything's all good. So my approach is to plan in a deload in a ballpark range of where I think the fatigue will be highest and we'll need to pull things back so that the individual can recover and continue training. But I will also adjust my approach and reactively adjust when we deload based on the metrics I'm monitoring for my athletes, which are their recovery, their muscle soreness, and their overall performance and enjoyment of the plan as well.
And in case they report they feel like fatigue in a period when the deload is like in the next 2-3 weeks it's planned, is it okay for them to push it earlier in order for them to get the benefit of recovery?
It's always going to depend on how much fatigue and when they experience that fatigue. So if you've planned for a deload at week 6 of a training cycle, and in week 3 of the training cycle, somebody is experiencing a lot of fatigue and they're just not recovering at all, there's something seriously wrong with the program, and you're probably better off adjusting the program than taking a full deload, because then you're just going to get very messy and things are going to be confusing. So what I like to do when I find myself in those situations is to identify which body parts are experiencing the most amount of fatigue and reduce volume on those body parts and take a lighter session for a week or 2 and see how that impacts the individual's overall recovery. And if they start recovering, we just continue the cycle, and that's the volume that we set. And then if needed, we'll deload in week 6 as planned. Now, if it's just a random sort of one-off session where somebody experiences a lot of fatigue and they're not recovering, like I said, I'll take a light session. But if it's variables such as, they might have had a really bad night's sleep or they had some alcohol, partying, whatever, they didn't recover from their session, I would likely address those factors before I change the program. And I think a lot of people are a little bit too quick to pull the trigger on adjusting the program. That is impact the individual's response to that plan. So it's a tricky question, but I think you have to assess recovery, what contributes to recovery, which is always going to be things like diet, sleep, their stress levels, all those sorts of things. And if somebody feels a lot of fatigue, but it's because those 3 areas that relate to their recovery are not where they should be, then you address those first before you adjust the training program. But you might need to take a light day or have a few extra days out of the gym so that the person can recover. And if some of those factors are going to be in that state in an ongoing fashion, so say somebody's having a kid and they're just highly stressed, not sleeping very well, you can't really fix that. So you might have to adjust the program moving forward. But if it is something that's more like transient, whereas going out on the weekend or just having a bad night's sleep, hopefully we can address those things and not have to change the plan moving forward.
Great. And I feel that this is great. Yes, thank you. And now we had covered essentially the parts of the strength training and how we can return to the gym after the lockdown. Let's move forward to nutrition. Likely more people now will need the more information on how to lose some body fat if they during the lockdown accumulated more body fat since they did not have enough stimulus, or maybe because you're at home likely to be eating more food, especially if you have a family and kids. That's kind of staying at home. It's kind of difficult for them, for you especially, having the whole family around, to stick to a more regime of yours that you've been following. So what you recommend in terms of nutrition? Should people start tracking food, or just to do food swaps? Let's say if they have been eating like some processed bread, to stick to oats, or should they try to just do that intuitively? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so definitely going to be challenging for people to start dieting if they're still working at home and not allowed to return to their normal routine. But my advice would be the same in this situation as it would be for anyone looking to start a diet. And first is to conduct a behavior inventory. Look at all of the things that you're doing now and to identify what's called behavioral deficits. So things that you're not doing enough of, that you need to be doing more of to achieve your goal. And this could be, planning your meals ahead of time. This could be portioning out your food, or tracking your calorie intake and weighing yourself more frequently. Whatever the things you're not doing enough of now are that your goal requires, and also identify the behaviors that you're doing in excess. So behavioral excesses, things that you're doing too much of that are detrimental to your goal. So this could be ordering takeaway, this could be drinking alcohol, this could be sleeping in, this could be not getting your daily steps or whatever it is. This could be, drinking too much alcohol, ordering too much takeaway, sleeping in too much, all those sorts of things. And you try to then rank order which of those behavioral deficits and excess are going to contribute the most to your progress. So if you've been eating takeaway every single night of the week and you're just getting very energy dense, hyperpalatable foods, that would be the first behavior that I would look to address. And then if you look at the deficits, generally they're going to marry up, and you can say that, okay, I've been doing too much eating out, but I haven't been doing enough cooking my own meals. I haven't been eating enough vegetables and portioning my food. So they're the behavior targets I'm going to have. So now you create behavior targets. 1, plan and prepare my meals. 2, portion size my dinners. And 3, eat some more fruits and vegetables. And then you just start very simply by improving your behaviors, increasing or reducing the deficit, and minimizing the excess, so that you can slowly start to facilitate the changes and actions necessary to achieve your goal. And for a lot of people, this sounds super, super simple, but it will work. And then as you go, you should see some pretty immediate progress, especially if you haven't been dieting at all and you've been just enjoying yourself during COVID-19. And as you go through this period of behavior formation, hopefully you get those really early results that are going to motivate you more. And as your progress starts to slow down and we see diminishing returns, that's when you can start to more tightly control your diet and start measuring more variables. So you might find that your rate of weight loss has plateaued after, say, 4 weeks, and you've just been focusing on these behaviors and you've lost a couple of kilos, but you can't lose any more. Well, that's when you would start to say, okay, I'm going to track my daily step count a little bit more. I'll weigh myself, 3 or more times a week, and I'll start weighing and measuring my food and tracking that in MyFitnessPal, or create a meal plan for myself that I'm going to follow, so I can control energy intake and energy expenditure and ensure that I'm, so that I'm creating a calorie deficit. And then that should allow you to then keep progressing. But initially, I think a very simple approach that assesses behavior will go a really long way in helping people make very easy progress early with minimal cognitive effort. They're not going to have to really, get bogged down in the details of weighing, tracking, measuring food. When they can just simply make some food swaps, as you mentioned. If they're drinking lots of full cream milk, they swap it to light milk, or they stop getting takeaway every night and they start cooking some meals at home that are less calories. You'll be able to shave off a lot of calories over the course of the day and the week, just by identifying the behavioral deficits and excesses, for fat loss goals, which are, for fat loss, the goals are going to be creating an energy deficit. We want to eat less calories than our body burns. So controlling calorie intake, portioning foods is going to be very important. Eating enough protein. So if people haven't been eating enough protein, that's a deficit. They need to eat more protein. Eating a high volume diet, so plenty of fruits and vegetables that are energy sparse, take up a lot of room on your plate, but for not a lot of calories, is always going to be good from a satiation and fullness point of view. So when you look at those things, you then just assess, what am I doing? What am I too much of? Doing what? Self monitor in achieving the week. So you should sit down at the end of every week and assess your performance. Well, did I eat 4 to 5 serves of protein each day? Did I prepare all my meals? Did I eat 2 to 3 servings of vegetables? Did I weigh myself? Did I get at least 10,000 steps per day? You just, over time, try to improve your performance. So you're ticking all those boxes each day. Progress should follow.
Great. Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Jacob. It's amazing. And I think that all the tips you provided are really amazing, since a lot of people, they jump straight ahead to like creating a deficit and trying to track everything, and they're not like covering the foundation and doing like those behavior audits you mentioned that are important from the beginning, like to start small and like gradually building our habits and improving little by little, since in the long run that will lead to long-term success. So it's great that you share that, like that gradually making changes will lead to long-term success instead of jumping straight ahead. And at some point that will be more overwhelming for people, since there will be a lot on their plate to start preparing meals, start tracking, start counting steps, and the stress that it will be introduced from all the changes coming in their life will be detrimental at some point, and they will lose motivation because they will not be able to basically follow all those new changes and things happening for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's better to make slow and steady progress consistently than rapid progress that's unsustainable.
Yeah, and for the last thing we wanted to talk with you is about recovery. It's not last but importance, but in our list, since we all know that strength and nutrition are important, but when it comes to recovery, like sleep and stretching, foam rolling, maybe massages, are very important for us to allow our body to get enough rest so we can progress. Especially sleep is something people neglect a lot, and they think it's not important, but I feel that maybe it's more important than the nutrition itself. What are your recommendations and tips when it comes to those 3 things I mentioned, or is there anything else you would like to add on the topic of recovery?
Yeah, so recovery is by definition our return to baseline performance. So if we train hard in the gym and we do a set of squats and we do 4 sets of 5 at 100 kilos, and we, on average across those 4 sets, our RPE is, say, in the hour following that, you're probably not going to be able to lift 100 kilos for 4 sets of 5 because you have too much fatigue and your body hasn't yet recovered from that first 4 sets. So over time, when we sleep, when we eat, and when we allow our body to rest and digest, we recover. And once we have recovered to a point where we can then perform that same 4 sets of 5 at 100 kilos up for an RP of 8 on the squat, we are by definition recovered. Now, when it comes to things that can maximize your recovery, the first is to train with a workload that allows you to recover in the time frame necessary for you to then see positive adaptations and improvements in your fitness. So what I mean by that is, if you're training with too much volume, too much intensity in, say, your first lower body session of the week, you might dig a recovery hole that is so deep that you don't return to baseline until the following week. But if you have a second lower body session, say on the Thursday, and this first lower body session is again so fatiguing that you don't recover until the next the week, then by the time you do your second lower body session on the Thursday, you won't be recovered, and that's problematic. So to ensure that you're recovering, you need to train with an appropriate amount of volume, intensity, and you need to have the frequency in your program set up in a way that allows you to recover between workouts. Obviously, you will carry some residual fatigue, so you might be a little bit sore and things like this. But again, you should be able to perform at a level necessary that makes the training session productive. And from there, we have the second thing that you can focus on, which is passive recovery. And passive recovery is, all of the things that allow you to regenerate the system, such as sleep, relaxation, and stress management, which is what I spoke about earlier. So make sure that you're getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, taking some time out during the day to unwind and just, let your brain, do its thing, without always being constantly stimulated by technology or feeling overstressed by being quote unquote busy, and then also managing stress. So having strategies in place to deal with emotions and cope with any stresses that you face in life, and that's a big part of being a human, I guess, is that we are always experiencing stress in many, many ways. Sometimes it's actual, sometimes it's perceived, and the body doesn't differentiate stress. So it's important to recognize if we want to maximize our recovery from training stress, we need to minimize stresses from other areas in our life. So making sure that you have tools and strategies to deal with any stress you experience is really important. Stay on top of your sleep and get some relaxation, some meditation, mindfulness, reflection each day. And that can go a really long way in accelerating your recovery. And from there we have nutrition. So obviously consuming enough calories, appropriate amount of each macronutrient, so protein, and also making sure that the quality of your diet is the nutrients to support through your work plans, and also drinking enough water and things like that. And then we have active recovery. Things like deloads, still training, but just not at the same degree of intensity or volume as what we normally are. Active rest phases, where you just take some time away from training, really important. I like to have at least 1 or 2 weeks a year where I'm not in the gym training hard, and I can just chill out at home and have some time away from training. That they're really potent ways to reduce and stuff, tools at the top. So therapeutic stuff like massage and therapy, they can be very, very beneficial, but they're only really topping up our recovery if we have all of those other things I discussed in place. These should be a lot. You shouldn't look to these things. Call if you're feeling under recovery, focus on the other factors I addressed, and then the supplemental stuff. So that's your compressive garments, your thermal treatments, all the things like ice baths, your foam rollers, Theraguns, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to do too much, but if they make you feel like you're recovering, they make you feel like they're doing something and you're better off for it, then that's fine. But again, just make sure that you're addressing all of those other factors first before you go worrying about them.
Okay, and do you use some kind of recovery tools by yourself, like as you said, Theraguns or foam rolling techniques or something, or you first addressing the things you mentioned in the beginning, and then if you feel that you need something more, you go to additional tools like Theraguns.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so other than that and the things that you have mentioned, do you have anything else you would like to add on the 3 things we covered?
No, I'm pretty happy with that. Let me know if you have any other questions, but I think I covered most of the points I wanted to address.
Great. Thank you so much for the information which you have shared and all the amazing tips. I believe that everyone from our followers and subscribers that are listening to that interview will benefit a lot from everything you mentioned, and to be successful long term in their workouts and their dieting goals, and will achieve success going into the gym now after the lockdown, and not only that, but overall in their gym performance. I'd like to thank you again for taking the time and for helping us reach more people and explain better how to be successful in training and nutrition.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, David.
Anytime, and again, thank you for your time, Jacob.